Alright, so I'm recording this review at the same time as my review of Together Forever, so I apologize if I still seem a little miffed with the show as I go through this one. I'll say right out the gate, though, that I liked... What was this one called? Growing Pains? I think this one was called Growing Pains. I liked Growing Pains a lot more than Together Forever. Still didn't love it. I loved aspects of it, kind of like how I loved the interactions between Steven and Connie in Together Forever. I liked aspects of this episode. I didn't love it, though. It hit really hard, though, and I appreciate what they did. Let me put it that way. In this episode, Steven doesn't have anybody to talk to because Greg is on tour with whatever Sadie is calling her group now. I don't even remember. And their tour's been extended, so he's not even coming home when Steven expected him to. And also the gems are all not here for some reason. All at once. Whatever. Point is, he's going through stuff stemming directly from what happened last episode, and also what happened in the several previous episodes, and he has no one to work through it with. I don't know why he can't pop over to Little Homeworld and talk to Peridot, when we just had an episode about him and Peridot being friends no matter what, and he's also literally opened up to her already. But apparently that's not an option. And his anxiety starts to get the best of him. He starts randomly growing and swelling up. Meanwhile, Connie calls him to check in on him after what happened, sees this happen, and insists that he go to see her mom at the hospital. And we learn that Steven just straight up has PTSD. They don't say it in that many words, but he straight up has PTSD. To the point that his body is so used to reacting to crises as if they're the end of the world because they were for so long, that now even small crises feel like the end of the world to him. That psychologically he is compelled to react to small crises as if they're the literal end of the world. Which is more baggage than any person, real or fictional, should ever have to deal with, and I sympathize with the character a lot. Like, I guess if I had actually sat down and put the specific shape that Steven's PTSD would take into words, I'd probably put it like that. But I'd never actually taken the time to sit down and put it into words. So it still hit really hard to hear it explained that way. Also, apparently, Steven does self-heal, because he has multiple fractures throughout his entire skeleton that have healed, but there's still evidence of them, implying that all those cartoon antics that he used to get into did real harm to his body, and he just immediately self-healed. And I've seen some people getting real upset about this. I don't think it matters as much as some people think it does. Because we have known that getting knocked around by gems and stuff has hurt him. He's felt pain. But if his bones have healed immediately, then the end result is still the same. He still felt that much pain and then got up and kept going. Does that make sense? So this is definitely a startling realization, and it recontextualizes the older cartoony style of the show a bit, and makes me feel kind of guilty for finding the cartoon antics funny. And I think that's why I don't like this reveal. It's done very effectively, don't get me wrong. In terms of the writing here, it's extremely strong, it's extremely powerful. But I don't like it as a dramatic reveal because, as I said before, the net result is still the same. So why did they have to retroactively ruin those parts of the show for the fans with this reveal? Couldn't they have surprised us in a different way? Wouldn't the reveal of the exact shape of Steven's PTSD have been enough? I don't know. Again, from a writing standpoint, it was handled super well. So I am still glad it was in here. I'm just asking the question because I feel like it needs to be asked. And Dr. Maheshwaran, man, is very patient with Steven and takes the situation very seriously. And Connie's there. She checks in on him there. She checks in on them, and now she has a better understanding of what's up with him. Which is great, because she is handling this so well that can only be a good thing going forward. And also, the episode ends with Greg getting there as Steven is growing to a larger size than he has throughout this whole situation, showing that things are escalating more than they have throughout this whole situation. And he's able to talk Steven down. And so now Steven is well aware that building a support network is the best way forward from here. That simply dismissing people when they offer to help him work through this, the way that he dismissed Connie because she needed to get back to studying, is only going to hurt him. Like, if they try to spin it that he doesn't understand that going forward from here, and if they especially try to spin it that the characters around him don't also understand that and keep him from dismissing them going forward, I'm going to be very angry. Because finally Steven is progressing. He's making progress. I don't want to see him take a step back, because I feel that will send a bad message to anyone who's actually going through this, who might be watching the show and using this to understand better what's happening to them. I don't think it would be a very positive experience for them to see that after having this breakthrough, things just go back to the way they were, you know? Even if that is something that might happen to someone in the real world, even if backslides are a thing, Steven Universe is fiction. It's an idealized version of the world. Like, there's something to be said for realism and realistic portrayals of stuff, but there's also something to be said for the positive benefits of a little bit of healthy fantasy. Seeing Steven continue to progress from here could even serve as the little bit of encouragement that some traumatized kid needs to likewise move forward. Now, if the whole corrupted Steven theory does turn out to be true and he does backslide and become a giant monster, that would work. That, I think, would still work, because that's a fantasy scenario. It doesn't feel quite so realistic and down to earth. So it can represent the fact that people with mental health issues sometimes experience backslides in a way that doesn't discourage people in a similar situation to Steven, if that makes sense. So I'd still be okay if that happened, which may sound ludicrous because that's like, he'd literally be turning into a monster there. That feels bigger than him just not talking to people again, right? But I genuinely feel like him just not talking to people again would be worse. I don't know, man. This episode was an emotional roller coaster. Again, there was stuff I loved in it. His interactions with Connie, his interactions with Dr. Maheshwar, and his interactions with Greg at the end were fantastic. Like, Connie called Greg, and Greg dropped everything he was doing, despite literally just telling Steven earlier that day how much he loved being on tour so that he could be there for his son. Like, I've seen people give Greg crap, and I don't entirely disagree with them, right? Some of these are people I really, really respect their point of view. But I've seen people giving Greg crap, especially lately when we've been seeing Steven deal with all this stuff, for leaving him with the gems and seemingly being absent most of the time. But I don't feel like you can really blame him for that. Like, as much as I don't want to say that, because at least on principle, I do like the gems as characters, it's really their fault. They led Greg to believe that once Steven started to exhibit gem powers, they knew what was best for him and Greg didn't. And Greg was still there. Steven still saw him regularly. It's just Greg expected that all of his emotional and developmental needs were being met by the gems when they just weren't. And when he discovered that, he started to make himself more present in Steven's life. Yeah, Greg probably should have checked in on Steven and the gems more often. He probably should have known what gem missions entailed earlier than he actually did. And maybe he should have done something to limit them, which is something that he never really even tried to do. But I still feel like Steven and Greg's relationship has been a net positive for both of them, if that makes sense. And I definitely think that Greg, knowing what's up with, maybe not literally everything that's up with Steven, but knowing that something is up with Steven is a very good thing. Unless that one leak turns out to be true, in which case it will fold back in on itself and become a very terrible thing. You know which leak I'm talking about. I don't have to go into detail about that, I'm sure. Anyway, what did you guys think of the episode Growing Pains? If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.